Poppy Playtime is a franchise I have had a complicated relationship with over the years. From despising the first two chapters to loving the multiplayer spin-off to hating Phase 3 and then absolutely adoring Chapter 3 and then not caring for the Roblox game. I have had a really difficult time with this series. Then, Chapter 4 was announced, and I, believe it or not, was genuinely excited for its release. It seemed to be doubling down on all the things I loved about Chapter 3, but at the same time I had these underlying worries about the game. The game just wasn't marketed very well. It seemed more focused on showing us all the new characters they were adding, and not enough about the game itself. Essentially, I went in hoping for the best, but more than ready to be disappointed. And well, now it's time for me to tell you just how I feel about this game. This video is going to be structured a little differently to my others. Instead of categorizing different parts of the game and reviewing them individually, I will go in depth and talk about each sequence of this game individually. Without further ado, let's begin my review of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4. After the opening cutscene, the game begins just where we left off in Chapter 3, in the elevator leading to the deepest pits of Playtime Co. Poppy gives us a monologue about just how dark and twisted the lower levels are going to be. We are told that this is going to be a hell because that's exactly what it was designed to be. Poppy stays behind to try and save Kissy from whatever happened above, and we are left to fend for ourselves, our only direction being to find Poppy's friend who will take us to the safe haven. The game opens up with some of the best atmosphere I've seen in a mascot horror game. Everything is broken down and bloody, creating this eerie vibe that just sinks into your soul throughout the game, making you travel through expansive caverns and dark facilities created with three purposes in mind: contain, study, and most of all, torture. I also feel the need to mention something. This game has dead bodies littered all around the environment, and that makes me extremely happy. God, that is a horrific clip out of context. What I mean is lots, if not all mascot horror games always feel extremely sanitized because they are always marketed towards younger audiences. So to see this game having realistic, rotting dead bodies is so incredibly cool because it shows that they are not pulling any punches with this game. This is a horror game first with the mascots second. After that incredible scene setting, we come across a train that needs to be opened, leading to the first proper puzzle of this game. They are nothing too noteworthy, just very similar to hand puzzles from the previous chapters. They are slightly better, but not by much. After that puzzle, we board the train and meet someone, talking to us through an eye on the TV screen. This is Harley Sawyer, better known as the Doctor. I freaking love this guy. Harley Sawyer is the main antagonist of the chapter and is just such a menace throughout this entire game. Even when there are no signs of him, you always have this oppressing feeling that he is always watching you, always studying you. He feels that he is the one in control of who lives and dies in this facility. He is merely playing with you. He is such an incredible antagonist in this game. Despite the hopelessness apparent to us, we press on in an attempt to find the friend Poppy wanted us to find, until we are stopped by the Doctor, or more accurately, the Nightmare Critters. The Doctor commands them to swarm the player. This section is so incredible because of just how manic that moment feels. There are critters swarming you from every direction. The only way of holding them back is by using the flare gun attached to our equipment. And you can't just spam the gun either. Due to the cooldown on the bullets, you have to count your shots and fire carefully. This creates an incredible sequence where you have to remain calm in an incredibly tense situation in an attempt to survive. The segment only ends when the Doctor decides he's seen enough and chooses to record the critters. Obviously, this is just a glorified timer on the section, but it serves the story so well because it makes you feel truly helpless. At this point in the story, your life is completely within the hands of the Doctor, and he is keeping you alive purely because he sees a use in you. Almost immediately after one of my favourite sequences in the game begins, the Doctor puts you through another one of his tests, the toxin gas. He fills the room you're in with the same red smoke from Chapter 3, and you know immediately you need to find a way to block the source of the smoke. The events begin quickly and get worse with every passing second. You feel genuinely disoriented as you stumble around the passageways trying to find the valve that will close the pipes. The effects and filters that appear on the screen make you feel so immersed in the moment, feeling panicked and disoriented. Genuinely horrifying. After you make your escape, you are introduced to another threat within this factory, the Doctor's favourite pet, Yarnaby. You have a very quick but thrilling chase section with him until you find your escape. For a moment, you feel a sense of safety. It seems the Doctor has decided to let you breathe for a while. You slowly press on through the prison, the atmosphere once again being at the forefront, until you fall into a pit. You stand up and realize another monster, Pianosaurus, is standing there, ready to attack you, until he is immediately eaten alive. Rest in peace, Pianosaurus. He is genuinely never seen again after this moment. The creature that ate him emerges from the shadows, and is this lovely chap, Doughy the Doughman. He claims to be the friend Poppy sent us to find, and begins taking us to the safe haven. On the way, we find a tape that I feel we need to talk about. This random tape you can completely miss contains an audio recording of 4 people labelled as specialists in the subtitles, and they talk about a task Playtime Co. sent them to do, how corporate is going to cover it up, and a character called Boxy Boo. This is, of course, a reference to Project Playtime, and as an avid enjoyer of Project, before Phase 3 at least, this made me extremely happy. As we continue to follow Doughy, we come across a locked gate that we need to open. I'll take this as an opportunity to talk about the other types of puzzles in this game, the ones where you have to find things and/or enter a code. These are definitely the better type of puzzles because they require you to take in information like a color code and what colors relate to what numbers to put into the machine, and you also get to explore the environment, which can get annoying when you're just looking for that last damn broken lever to finish the puzzle, but it's overall fine. These puzzles are just very fun bits of gameplay between the horror sequences. Then, just before we reach the safe haven, Poppy catches up with us. She appears to have rescued Kissy off screen, but she is in a very poor state. We finally reach safe haven and put Kissy somewhere she can rest. Before anything else happens, we get a moment to take in safe haven. It's calm and peaceful, full of friendly critters that have been hurt by the horrors outside. For the first time in this entire series, you feel a moment of genuine safety. You find Doughy and Poppy talking in front of an inactive generator. Poppy finally decides to explain what this has all been about. The pressured gas we prepared in Chapter 3 was to make an explosive. An explosive in the foundation of the facility that would make everything crumble, destroying everything and anyone within the area. The only way to make sure that all the horrific things that Playtime Co. has done stay forever buried. But before we can do that, we need to activate the generator, and the only person left with clearance to do that is Harley Sawyer. We have to kill him and take something called the Omni Hand from him, a device that serves as a master override for everything in the prison. Our mission is clear. But before we go, we see that Doughy is a little bit unsure about the whole thing. He knows what needs to be done, but knows that hundreds of innocent lives will be taken in the process, punished for being the victims. We choose to ignore his concerns and leave safe haven, ready to do whatever it takes to murder Harley Sawyer. The journey will not be without its troubles, though, and we are immediately shown that when Yarnaby confronts us, beginning another intense chase as you twist and turn, doing everything in your power to create as much distance as possible between you and Harley's pet. The chase ends with Yarnaby catching a blaze and being burnt alive in a beautifully animated moment. From this point onwards, it is made clear that the Doctor sees you as too dangerous to continue using for experiments. He wants you dead. This is immediately shown when he locks you in a room that seems to have been originally built as a meat freezer. Harley intends to watch you freeze to death. This is very similar to the red smoke sequence before, but it is just as tense as you try desperately to escape as your screen slowly applies a freeze effect over the top. After that, we hit another, if not my absolute favourite section in the game. You have to find a code for a machine, but pieces of the code are scattered in an outer sector that is filled with red smoke. Luckily, you find a gas mask that allows you to walk in the gas for a limited amount of time, having to return to safe zones to refill the oxygen supply. I love this section so much because it requires you to always be focused on time management, which, as this game has shown several times, is an incredibly effective way to invoke a sense of fear in the player. But on top of that, you have to explore a large area, and that area has such a great atmosphere with smashed up toys littering the place, bloody walls on this almost medical area aesthetic. Once we get out of that area, we fall into another trap placed by the Doctor. We plummet into an abandoned containment area that is now home to another one of the Doctor's experiments, barber chops, or better known as Azazel from the Toxic Cesspit. And I'm gonna be honest, this is like the one part of the game that I don't enjoy. It's just got something to do with Barber Chops' patrolling AI, or lack thereof. They will just find you and make a beeline for you, which would be fine if there was some sort of way of sneaking around them, but after a while they just teleport in front of you. They don't even kill you when they attack you. It takes a couple of hits for them to kill you. On the first few hits they just spit vomit on you and you can't sprint for a bit, which in my opinion is even more frustrating. Once we escape, we are hit with an incredibly interesting moment. Harley locks us in the room and tells us the only way to leave is to kill one of the friendly smiling critters. The player is forced to either quit playing and stay there forever, or decide that your mission is more important than an innocent life. Obviously, you have to kill him for the game to progress, but it sends a dark message about whoever we are playing as. Up until this point, the protagonist has been a silent blank slate for the player to project themselves onto, but now we realize that they have a level of complexity to them, and perhaps a personal investment in the situation. After that chilling moment, Harley has one line of defense left for us, the only thing between us and killing him. A labyrinth full of these terrifying robots with one objective: find and kill. We have to sneak around and collect batteries in this incredibly tense moment. Eventually, we make it to Harley Sawyer. Not a projection of an eye or an audio communication. The real thing. He isn't even human anymore, just a mess of machinery and human organs. We pull the plug on his life, killing the one who killed the many. I won't lie, this moment doesn't feel as impactful as it could have been. It's not bad, it's just I feel like he should have had a final monologue reflecting on everything he had done instead of just some generic ominous death line. Anyways, we retrieve the Omni Hand and begin making our way back to the safe haven. On our way back, we take a carriage. It's completely silent in there and serves as a moment of reflection, not just for this chapter, but for the game as a whole up until this point. A chance for the player to reflect on everything they've seen, everything they've survived. All of this building up to one moment. This moment. We arrive at Safe Haven, the location having an eerie feeling to it now. It's no longer the place of safety for those hurt by Playtime Co. Instead, now it's the place where everyone in this facility will be sentenced to death. We use the Omni Hand to activate the generator. All the pieces are in place, we just have to use them. We make it to the foundation and do a really fun puzzle, where we move the red gas through the pipes so that the explosion will cover all the important areas. But before we begin the explosion, we find a tape that details Doey's backstory. He, like many others, was an unlucky child that Playtime Co. used after he fell into a massive container of the substance used to make the Doey the Dough-Man toys. When his parents were allowed to see what their son had become, Doey panicked and in a fit of rage and confusion, murdered them. The bombs are ready, and with a simple click of the button, the timer begins. We leave and see if we can make any form of escape. When we run into Doey, who had been looking for the prototype, the machine that the late Doctor had worked for. Dowie is clearly confused as to why nothing was happening when all of a sudden you see an explosion in the distance, in the direction of the safe haven. You and Dowie rush there to see what had happened. Everything was destroyed. Nobody seems to have survived. We don't know what happened. A malfunction, or maybe the prototype snuck into safe haven and blew up the generator. That doesn't matter now, though. As Dowie stands there, looking at all the friends he had just lost, he starts to go crazy over the fact he couldn't save them, and that all he had ever done is hurt people. Dowie slowly transforms into this mess of a monster. Having lost control, he chases us, blaming us and Poppy for the plan to blow up the Foundation in the first place. The chase leading into the best boss fight in the series, an insanely tense sequence as you have to run from Dowie and use frost capsules and rotating blades to kill him. Dowie's death is an extremely emotional one, where he apologizes for lashing out as he's torn to pieces by a saw. The tragic truth being that Dowie died as the monster Playtime co-made him, and not as the hero he tried to be. We then fall into a trash chute where we find Poppy and Kissy, who both survived the explosion on Safe Haven. Trying to call Ollie, our friend from Chapter 3, and seemingly the one who planned the plot to bury all of Playtime Co. As the call goes on, Ollie becomes more and more suspicious. First, he just isn't making sense, and then his voice becomes more broken, more mechanical. Ollie is the prototype. We never needed the Omni-Hand to prepare the generator, but instead to make it backfire on itself. Putting a pause on the story, even I have to admit that Ollie being the prototype was insanely predictable, but I feel they do enough to make the plot twist insanely cool. The atmosphere is chilling as you are trapped within the trash chute and can hear loud footsteps in the distance, while you hear your last resort for help slowly turning into the villain you have been dreading this whole time. We fall deeper into the facility, separated from everyone else. We walked past the poppies used to make the red smoke, eventually finding ourselves at a tape player. What initially seems like an innocent message telling trespassers to turn back quickly turns into a sinister message stating that inserting the tape triggered an alarm and that you will be killed because absolutely nobody is allowed to see what is further below. Then we see Huggy Wuggy in the distance, an old monster we presumed dead. He begins chasing towards us, the door slams shut, ending the game. Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 is a phenomenal horror game, with an incredible atmosphere, well-written and complex characters that drive along a powerful plot, on top of excellent sequences that terrify the player. I feel this video shows that this game is damn near perfect, and I am so glad to say it. After all the ups and downs in this franchise, I am now more than happy to say that Chapter 3 was not a fluke, and Poppy Playtime has gone from the symbol of money-hungry mascot horror developers to the face of innovation within the genre. This game has completely proved that Poppy Playtime is going in an incredible direction as a series, and a direction I cannot wait to see more of. And on that note, I've been Pathetic Ivy, and I bid you farewell.